As a gardener, are you ready for frost? Are you prepared? Do you have everything ready when the weatherman says, you might have frost tonight? Are you ready to cover those plants? Are you just ready to go, I'm done with gardening for this season? Some people have had a very long summer. Some people will think it's been very short because the farther north you go, the shorter the garden season is. But are you ready for frost? Because summer is ending and fall is quickly coming. This is Sandy, suburban homesteader, Wyoming, Arizona, and we're going to talk about frost today. What is frost? Can you always see frost? What's freezing fog? All these things affect your garden. And so to be more prepared, you need to know what frost really is. Do you know that only 25% of the entire world is free from frost? So the closer you are to the equator, the more likely you're never going to see frost. But on the spectrum, that means 75% of us are dealing with frost in our gardens in the spring and especially in the fall. I find it very disheartening some years when the frost in Wyoming comes early. Now last week we did have a frost advisory. At my house, I had no frost whatsoever. At my community garden plot, some of the zucchini leaves were a little curled up and dark after a couple days. So I knew there was some frost there. But I have this whole row of zucchinis, and one of them is just huge as can be. And I think it protected the rest of my garden. There wasn't very much frost damage throughout the whole garden. So just some really tender things had a little bit of effect, but did not kill them. Though yesterday I was talking to a garden friend of mine, and her entire garden in town was ruined. And she says, am I the only gardener in town that had their garden ruined? I'm sure she wasn't. And there were places outside of town where it dips down, that cold stays, and their gardens, unless they covered them. Now, what can you cover your garden with? A lot of times I've just used sheets and blankets when I didn't have like row covers. Now I have a pretty good supply of row covers that I can just drape over top of them. A trick to do is if it looks like it's going to frost in your area, water your plants at night. Before you go to bed, just go through and water your whole garden. It's a crazy thing, which you would think that that would be worse for them. But the water has a thermal mass, and it literally can keep it from frosting. Unless it's really cold, then there's really nothing you can do. Even the blankets and sheets and the row covers aren't going to save your garden. Those are just facts of garden life. Do you know your frost date in the fall? That on average, it's going to frost after this date. Here in Wyoming, our frost date is about September 15th. Though I have seen snow before then. I've seen frost in August. But other than last week when we had that chance of frost, it really looks like we're going to go way beyond our frost-free date. And so I'm a little excited about that because my cantaloupes are not ready yet. They got that mesh all over them, and every day I go over to the community garden and I look at them. But they're still green under that mesh, and they need to be tan. And the little bottom, I can't push in. So they're not ready, and I don't want to pick them before. So I will definitely be covering them with a lot of protection if it looks like it's going to get too cold. When they give you a frost date, your frost-free date in the spring, but mostly in the fall, what they're really counting on, it's not your garden plants that they're basing this on at all. They're basing it on perennial plants and trees, how it's going to affect them. Because your annuals and your garden, unless you have a really hardy seed that you planted, a cold hardy carrot or a cold hardy cabbage, something. It is not based on that at all. And if it's going to have a frost, it's going to freeze. So those are just facts of life. But that critical temperature, that plus or minus, that critical temperature in which it can change, it can frost, really depends on that plant. Some plants are much more tender. You got tender plants, partway tender plants, regular plants, somewhat hardy plants, and really hardy plants. And frost affects every single one of those differently. If you looked at your garden, an eggplant doesn't need to get to 32 degrees before it's going to die. An eggplant will die at 40 degrees many times. Not because it got frozen, it's just too cold for that plant. Okay, here's your definition of frost. The sudden onset, freezing temperatures that injure plants in which you see signs. It's different from chilling temperatures that affect the plants, because the chilling temperatures are like an eggplant. When it got to 40 degrees, it died. Or some of your plants, when it gets too cold, all the flowers will drop off. Frost means freezing at 32 degrees or below. Now, 32 degrees is when ice melts. It's not when water freezes. It's when ice melts. Now, you may see that white frost, or you may not. That depends on the moisture in the air too, on how it crystallizes that water vapor. But many times it'll frost and you don't see any frost on the grass, on the trees, on your windshield. It's considered a light frost between 29 and 32. A moderate frost is 25 to 28 degrees. A severe frost is considered at below 25 degrees. Now, what frost does is it's a dehydration. It disturbs the cells in your plants, and that's what can cause the damage or killing of your plants. One of the things that is interesting is if the temperature drops very, very slowly during the night, you won't see as much damage as if all of a sudden it just drops 10 degrees and it's freezing. That can really just literally burst the cells, and you got plants that are dying. And you may not see that death of the plants until the sun starts to rise and it starts to get warmer, and all of a sudden your plant turns darker and blacker and starts to shrivel up, and you have the death of that plant. Now, always the earth loses temperature at night. So if it's cloudy and the temperatures are lowering, that heat mass, that thermal mass in the soil can really protect your plants. If it's foggy, that's like an insulated blanket. And even though the temperatures go down, it can really protect your plant. And so fog is not bad in that morning, because it might have just saved your plants from being frosted. Now, if you have a very short growing season, look for seeds or plants that are a little more cold hardy. And a lot of times in magazines anymore, they'll tell you that, because people are always extending their season. They're using low tunnels, high tunnels, greenhouses. They want to plant through the winter. And so there are specific varieties that are a little more cold hardy, that if the temperatures are lower, even they may not be growing because of the lower temperatures, they are not dying either. And then when the temperature rises, they grow again. At this time of the year, you should watch your weather forecast every single day. Not just in the morning when you get up, but when it's supper time, look and see what the weatherman is saying. Is there a chance of frost? Then you can go out to your gardens and you can cover. You can water your plants first, then cover them. Tonight, I have a live stream where we're going to talk more about frost. And we're going to have a little contest on when my garden is going to frost. And I'm going to give away a $25 Amazon gift card to the person that is the closest without going past that date and time. Because I can check on my weather if it doesn't in the middle of the night exactly what time that temperature got to where it was frosted. So send me to $125 on Amazon. But I think the more you know about your weather, your frost, your zone, where you live, do you have a concrete wall that's by a plant that's very tender? That concrete wall or rock wall or building can absorb heat so that in the night it can protect that plant. So as gardeners, if we use that brain up there of ours, we can really extend our season and just enjoy the benefits of all that work we did all summer long and not let Jack Frost take that away from us. This is Sandy, Suburban Homesteader, Wyoming, Arizona. I will see you next time.